Welcome to BYOFAQ, the unofficial FAQ for the workplace.
Today's dial is social ability. The people who think out loud and the people who do their best thinking with the door shut. And why each one keeps misreading the other.
Right, so picture this. You've got the classic Monday morning status meeting, right? Like a major crisis just landed on the table.
Oh, yeah. Always a Monday.
Literally always. So say a major client is threatening to walk, or, I don't know, the supply chain just completely broke down. You have two people in this room looking at the exact same problem.
Okay. And they're handling it entirely differently, I assume.
Completely differently. So one person is up out of their chair, they're pacing around, pitching ideas at 1,000,000 miles an hour, reacting to like every micro expression in the room, just throwing half-baked solutions at the whiteboard.
Right, the out loud thinker.
Exactly. And then there's the other person. They are dead silent, just sitting totally still, staring at a notebook, maybe frowning a little bit. I mean, they haven't said a single word in 10 minutes.
And this is exactly where the collision happens. Because when the pacing person looks over at the silent person, they read that silence as being disengaged or stubborn or just not a team player.
Yeah, they see a roadblock.
Right. But the silent person is looking at the pacing person and thinking the exact opposite. They see this rapid-fire talking and read it as scattered or unprepared, just all talk.
Like, why don't you actually think about the problem for 5 minutes before you open your mouth?
Precisely. And the mistranslation happening in that room right then, that is the source of massive workplace friction, because both of those assumptions are almost always completely wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm the operator running that meeting, I just want solutions. The pacing person is at least giving me options. The silent person is basically just taking up a chair. So it's really easy to assume the loud one is working and the quiet one is checked out.
It is easy, yeah, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding of their cognitive machinery.
How so?
Well, the pacing person isn't scattered, and the silent person isn't disengaged. They are just running on two completely different cognitive engines. The out-loud thinker is processing the information in real time, using the room. The silent thinker is running complex permutations in their head and, refusing to speak until the equation balances.
So naming the difference between those engines is the fix.
Yes. Realizing neither one is broken is arguably the most useful tool you can have as a manager or a teammate.
Okay, I want to really dig into this extrovert versus introvert thing. Because we need to unpack the actual measurement here. When we look at these workplace behavioral frameworks, we're talking about a specific dial called social ability.
Right.
And I've looked at these charts. You'd see a dial with a high score and a low score. And everyone in HR immediately maps it to Myers-Briggs. They go, oh, John is an extrovert, Jane is an introvert. We've heard that debate 1,000,000 times. Aren't we just putting a fancy corporate sticker on an old psychology concept here?
Well, not exactly. I mean, they sit in the same neighborhood, obviously. But social ability is much, much more specific to professional energy and your actual processing style. Extroversion and introversion in popular psychology, they often get tangled up with social skill or charm or even just shyness.
Which this is not.
We need to clear that up right away, yes.
Yeah.
Because almost everyone gets it wrong on the first pass. Social ability is strictly not a measure of social skill. It is not about how friendly or polite you are in the break room.
So wait, you're telling me you can have someone who scores incredibly low on social ability, like at the absolute bottom of the dial, but they're still, I don't know, the most charming person at the company holiday party.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they can be incredibly polite, they can be funny, totally engaging, holding court at the appetizer table.
But then on Monday morning, they just shut their door.
Exactly. Because when it comes time to actually do the hard work to solve a really complex professional problem, they simply do not need the room. Social ability, in this context, only measures how you engage with groups and how much company you require to do your best work. It's strictly a workplace engine.
Okay, so it's about what fuels the work.
Yeah. Does your professional engine run on the combustion of real-time interaction? Or is it like a quiet solo charging battery?
I really like that battery metaphor because you're talking about where the work actually happens, right? The specific environment the engine needs.
Right.
Like if you put a combustion engine in a vacuum, it literally chokes, it dies. It needs the oxygen of other people to even function.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
But a battery, I mean, it just needs to be plugged into the wall, alone,
Yeah.
in a quiet room.
Yeah.
And then it gets to 100%.
Exactly. That is the perfect mechanic to keep in mind here. And to really grasp this, I think it helps to understand the broader context of these multidimensional behavioral frameworks.
Multidimensional, meaning it's not just a single label.
Right. Well, if you look at older models like, say, the DISC framework, rhymes with risk. They usually map human behavior into 4 rigid, overarching quadrants.
Right. You're an A or a B.
Yeah, but modern multidimensional tools don't do that. They treat social ability as just one independent dial among several. So you have a dial for autonomy, you have separate dial for process patience, another dial for logic, and your specific combination of all those dials creates your unique behavioral fingerprint.
Meaning you aren't just broadly the quiet type. You could be incredibly high on autonomy, meaning you want to aggressively own the project and call all the shots, but very low on social ability.
Right, meaning you want to own it and execute it completely alone without a committee.
Okay, that makes sense. The dials operate independently.
Exactly.
So if we isolate just the social ability dial for a minute, let's look at the people running on that combustion engine first, the high end.
Okay, yeah. So these are the people who are energized by other people. They are naturally outgoing. They're naturally persuasive. But the defining characteristic here, the real why behind their behavior, is that their thinking process is entirely external.
I see this all the time. I mean, they start a sentence and they genuinely have no idea how it's going to end.
Right, because for the high end of this dial, the conversation actually is the work.
It's not a report of the work they already did.
No, not at all. They genuinely do not know what they think about a problem until they start saying it out loud to an audience. It's like they're writing their rough drafts in the air.
Just workshopping it live.
Exactly. And as they speak, they're reading the room intuitively. They adjust the temperature of their argument based on people's faces, and they move ideas through relationships. They are literally energized by the friction of dialogue.
So our fictional shorthand for this, from the deep dive sources, is Leslie Knope.
The ultimate high social ability example.
Relentless warmth. Relentless forward momentum. I mean, networking isn't a chore for a Leslie Knope. It's a literal recharge.
Oh, completely. A Leslie Knope can walk into a crowded, stressful conference room completely exhausted, and they leave an hour later with more energy than they had when they walked in. They use relationships as the actual infrastructure to get things done.
Which brings us to the immense gift of the high end. That gift is persuasion, momentum, and acting as the human glue for a team.
Right. Because they are constantly reading the emotional data in a room, they can sell a group on a difficult, painful change that the room would have aggressively rejected from absolutely anyone else. They create buy-in through sheer relational force.
The engine runs hot. I mean, I've watched high social operators completely derail a project because they just couldn't stop themselves. The failure mode here is needing the audience too much, isn't it?
That is exactly it. Because their processing is external, they rely entirely on the feedback loop of the room. The failure mode happens when they keep processing out loud when the moment actually requires a firm, final decision.
They hit the optimal decision point, blow right past it, and just keep brainstorming.
Yeah, they mistake the noise for the work.
I've been in those meetings. Everyone is talking over each other. There's a ton of energy, high fives all around, and you walk out thinking, wow, what a great meeting. And then 2 days later, you realize absolutely nothing got built. The activity was just a substitute for progress.
And this is where things get slightly dangerous because the modern workplace is fundamentally designed to hide that failure mode. It actively rewards the noise.
It is a Leslie Knope paradise.
Completely.
Because if you think about the architecture of work right now, I mean, it is entirely built for the high end. Open plan offices where everyone can see everyone all the time.
Yes, glass walls everywhere.
Forced daily stand-ups.
Yeah.
Spontaneous, brainstorming sessions.
Yeah.
Collaboration is treated as the default, undisputed solution to literally every single business problem. We have built an entire corporate ecosystem that essentially assumes the combustion engine is the only valid way to work.
And that noise-rewarding ecosystem creates a massive, massive blind spot for leaders.
Because it's taxing everyone else.
Exactly. Because while the Leslie Knopes are just thriving in that open plan chaos, we are completely ignoring what this environment does to the other half of the spectrum, the inward thinkers, the low end of the dial.
It's a penalty.
It really is. Because the modern office is built exclusively for the high end, it quietly and constantly taxes anyone who doesn't operate that way.
Okay, we need to put a very strict frame around this low end before we go any further.
I agree. It's heavily stigmatized.
Yeah, because in a culture that basically worships extroversion, hearing you have low social ability sounds like a deficit. like a disease. It sounds broken, like you're missing a piece of software that everyone else has pre-installed.
And I cannot stress this enough. It is strictly not a deficiency. It is not shyness. It is not social anxiety. It is simply a different engine. These are the private, inward processing thinkers. They prefer working with tangible things.
Tangible things like what? Like data.
Yeah, they want the data, the system, the raw problem. They do not want to work the room to figure the problem out. In fact, they find the social ritual surrounding the work to be mostly a distraction from the work itself.
So the social stuff is literally in the way of the job.
To them, yes, which is why our fictional shorthand here is Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock does the hard thinking alone. He retreats into the mind palace.
Right. He doesn't pull Watson into a conference room to brainstorm and throw sticky notes on a whiteboard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He does the math internally, and he arrives with a fully formed answer. When he speaks, it is factual, it is concise, and he is certainly not filling the silence just to keep the room's energy up.
He doesn't care about the room's energy.
Not even a little bit. Because for Sherlock, the interpersonal song and dance is a literal tax on his cognitive bandwidth. Every ounce of energy he has to spend managing your facial expressions or, matching your vocal enthusiasm that is energy directly taken away from solving the actual problem.
So the gift here is obvious. It's depth, it's focus. It's the ability to completely separate the signal from the noise and deliver a highly considered answer. Because they aren't being influenced by the real-time social pressure, right?
Yeah.
Or the emotions of a loud meeting. Their logic is usually airtight.
It is, but the failure mode is just as real as the high ends. And it can be incredibly damaging to a fast-moving team.
The low end goes dark.
They go completely dark. They disappear into the work so completely that the rest of the team has absolutely no idea what is happening. And then the combustion engine teammates start to panic.
Because they can't see the work happening.
Exactly. If they aren't talking about it, they assume it isn't happening.
And the other failure mode I see constantly from inward thinkers is that they radically undersell their own brilliant ideas.
All the time.
Right. They will spend 3 weeks developing a game-changing system. They drop the pristine, perfect logic on the conference table, and they just assume the work will sell itself. And when it doesn't, when people push back, they get frustrated. They refuse to do the relational legwork required to get people on board.
Which goes right back to the core translation error we talked about at the beginning. The low end assumes the work speaks for itself. The high end assumes the relationships are the work.
Well, from an operator's perspective, if you are running a team, you have to look at the environment you are forcing these people into. Because if you demand live verbal brainstorming from your low social ability group, you are systematically losing your best thinkers.
You're suffocating them.
You are demanding a battery-powered engine run on combustible fuel.
Yeah.
And then you're standing there wondering why it's sputtering. You have to design the environment for them, not just build an open office and force them to navigate around it.
So, you have Leslie Knope and Sherlock Holmes on the same team. The collision is entirely inevitable. How do you stop them from driving each other completely crazy? The tools here are concrete and practical, and they start with sequencing.
Okay, let's start with the high end. Say I'm the out loud thinker, I'm the manager who wants to brainstorm. How do I adapt to the inward thinker without just leaving them alone forever?
The high end needs to send the low end a question in advance. We call this giving them the pre-read.
The pre-read?
Yes. Do not ambush an inward processor in a live meeting and demand their best ideas on the spot. If you want their brilliance, you have to respect their process. If the meeting is at 2 o'clock, send them the core question at 10 in the morning.
Give them runway.
Exactly. Let them do their inward thinking before the live meeting even starts. When they walk into the room, they will have that considered answer ready. You get their depth, but you respected their sequencing.
Okay, I get the pre-read for the inward thinker. But if I'm Sherlock Holmes, and I'm just sitting there quietly processing a problem for 3 days, I know I'm driving my highly social manager crazy. They think I'm ignoring them. How am I supposed to signal that my brain is actually working without faking a brainstorm or wasting my time managing their anxiety?
The low end needs to give the high end a verbal headline.
A verbal headline, like a status update.
Essentially. Remember, the high end reads silence as disengagement or even hostility. They think you're ignoring them. So instead of going completely silent to think, which again, totally freaks the high end out, the inward thinker just needs to vocalize their process.
Just tell them what the batteries do.
Exactly. Just say, hey, I'm processing this right now. Let me run the numbers and get back to you in an hour. Give them the BLUF.
The BLUF.
BLUF.
Pronounced bluff. It stands for bottom line up front. Just give them the bluff regarding your status. Signal that the engine is running Even if it is running quietly, that single sentence completely diffuses the anxiety of the out-loud thinker. Wait. Giving a verbal headline sounds great in theory, but, in a high-pressure, fast-moving tech startup, saying, let me think about it for an hour, isn't exactly going to fly.
You think it's too slow?
Well, yeah. A lot of the time, the client is literally on the phone, or the server is actively on fire. Doesn't the low social person just need to adapt to the speed of business? You can't always retreat to the mind palace when things are hitting the fan.
It's a very common operator pushback, and it's valid to a point, but I think you are confusing the speed of talking with the speed of solving.
How so?
Yes. In a true 5-minute literal emergency, everyone just has to react. You grab a bucket and throw water on the fire. But if we're being honest, 90% of business emergencies are just manufactured urgency.
Okay, that's fair. Everything is labeled ASAP.
Right. And if you force the inward thinker to give you an answer right this second, they will give you a safe, shallow answer just to get you to stop talking to them. They will appease you to protect their bandwidth.
Just to get you out of their office.
Exactly. But yielding to their process actually speeds up the final result. It is so much faster to get the correct, airtight answer in 1 hour than to spend 4 hours debating 5 half-baked ideas that the high social person just invented on the spot to fill the silence.
So it's about trading the illusion of speed for actual velocity.
Yes.
But implementing these things, the pre-read, the verbal headline, it requires the manager to actually manage. You cannot just distribute a behavioral profile to the team, point to a chart that says John is low social ability, and assume the friction is magically solved.
Absolutely not. The profile is a prompt, not a conclusion. These behavioral frameworks complement conversation. They never replace it. If you hand someone a profile and say, well, you are low on social ability, so I guess you never want to run a client meeting, you are actively weaponizing the tool. You are putting them in a box. You still have to ask the person how they experience their own wiring.
Which brings us to a really massive structural problem. What happens when the friction isn't just about, how you run a Tuesday morning meeting? What happens when someone's natural dial simply does not match the actual job you hired them to do?
Yes. In these frameworks, the raw score on the dial actually matters much less than the gap.
The gap between their score and the job.
Right. The gap between a person's natural pattern and the role's daily demands. We call this the mechanic of pattern versus fit.
Okay. Define those two real quick.
So your pattern is just how you are naturally wired. It's your baseline. Fit is how well that baseline wiring aligns with the environment you are forced to operate in every single day.
Let's look at that mechanic in action, because this is where companies lose their best people. Say you put a low social ability person in a role that is 80% client-facing. They're doing back-to-back pitch meetings, working networking events, engaging in constant verbal negotiation.
Right.
They are essentially forced to act like Leslie Knope all day.
And they are in a fundamentally bad fit. Now, to be crystal clear, they might perform exceptionally well. They might be your top closer. They might hit all their numbers. The framework doesn't say they can't do it. But they will be quietly draining their battery every single day. They are using sheer willpower to overcome their natural wiring. And willpower is a finite resource.
It runs out.
Eventually, yes. The cognitive tax becomes unsustainable and they will burn out. Management is always shocked when their top performer suddenly quits, but the burnout was entirely predictable.
Because they were running a battery engine, but the job never allowed them to plug into the wall.
Exactly.
Conversely, take a high social ability person and put them in a solo, heads-down data entry role with no meetings and no collaborative overlap.
Yeah.
You put Leslie Knope in a basement with a spreadsheet.
They will absolutely wilt. They are being completely starved of the connection that generates their energy. And what happens is they will start creating drama or organizing unnecessary meetings just to feel alive.
Just to get some friction going?
Exactly. And the operator's solution here is critical. When you spot a bad fit, you do not ask the person to change their fundamental wiring. You cannot command a battery to become a combustion engine.
So you change the environment. Or you change the parameters of the role.
Yes. You shift the parameters to leverage their actual gifts. You shift the low social person to a role focused on the architecture of the deals rather than the verbal pitching of the deals. You let them build the airtight logic that the rest of the team uses.
And for the high social person?
For the high social person wilting in a silo, you give them a cross-functional project where they have to rally different departments and build consensus. You feed their engine.
This highlights a really crucial boundary for anyone using behavioral frameworks in the workplace. These dials are not predictive of competence. A person can be low on all the supposedly desirable traits for a specific role and still be absolutely brilliant at it. And a person can be a perfect match on paper and fail completely in the real world.
That is the most important takeaway for any leader. The tool tells you how someone operates, not how well they operate. It tells you what will give them energy and what will drain them. It maps the terrain, but it doesn't tell you how fast they can run.
You use it to increase fit. You use it to build complementarity. Because an entire team of out-loud thinkers is just a noise machine that struggles to actually execute anything. And an entire team of inward thinkers is a silent factory that struggles to coordinate or adapt to change. You need the mix, but if you have the mix, you have to translate for them so they do not destroy each other in the process.
The high end brings the momentum, the low end brings the depth. The friction between them is never a personality conflict. It is not malice. It is just a mistranslation of how they process information.
Which means the friction is entirely solvable. It's a mechanical issue, not a moral failing.
Think about the person at work who frustrates you the most right now. The one you think is difficult or stubborn or disengaged. What if they aren't difficult at all? What if they are just running a perfectly good engine in an environment that was exclusively designed for yours? And if that's true, what's one structural change you could make on Monday to stop taxing them and start actually using their gifts?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on BYOFAQ.